What if Tywin recognized Arya at Harrenhall? Let's explore the depths of it in the video.
After we interrogate them, we usually just...
Are we so well manned that we can afford to discard able young bodies and skilled laborers?
What are you looking at? Kneel! Kneel, or I'll carve your lungs out, boy.
You'll do no such thing. This one's a girl, you idiot. Dressed as a boy. Why?
Safer to travel, my lord.
Tywin looks closer at the girl before him. Although he has never seen Arya Stark before, something about the girl seems decidedly wolf-like. He's read Cersei's descriptions of the Stark children and sees a bit of Ned Stark in the girl, but he cannot be too certain. He orders her to sit in front of him as he has some of the Mountain's men brought forward. There, Tywin begins to ask them questions about where they found her and where Arya is from. Though he does not strike or threaten her or even raise his voice, there is something about him that leaves Arya unable to avoid his questions. She tries to lie as best she can, though.
Where are you from? Do you know whose house your family fought for?
Mootoon.
Mootoon. And yet my men say they spotted you in the God's Eye, in Lady Went's lands.
I was heading to the market with my parents, my lord.
And yet the town you were found in was abandoned for weeks. My men say you were found with a sword. A good sword, too. Castle-forged steel, of Ravosi design. Did you happen to get that sword from this market?
I found it off some dead men-at-arms.
Tywin raises an eyebrow, observing her closely. He takes note of her speech patterns, referring to him as my lord instead of my lord, how she speaks, and how many problems there are with her story.
If you are telling the truth, then you are a thief. If you are lying, well, then you are a terrible liar. Either way, I suppose a lying small folk is of little use to me. Sir Gregor, you have my leave to cut off her hands for theft.
Arya's eyes widen as the mountain looms closer. Syrio taught her to look into a man's eyes to see whether or not they are lying. But as she looks at Tywin, his eyes appear unreadable. She honestly cannot tell whether he is telling the truth or simply bluffing. But before she can think on it, Gregor suddenly grabs her by the hands and unsheathes his greatsword, preparing to send it downwards. That is until Arya yelps out.
Wait, I'm not a small folk. I am a daughter of Lady Went.
Sheila Went is an old woman past childbearing years. You are a Stark of Winterfell.
Arya bites her lip, forcing herself to remain silent as she tries to think of an answer. However, that silence is all Tywin needs. He orders Gregor to take her to a cell, one suited for her status. Rather than be put to work, Arya is placed in a tower cell with other northern prisoners. There she remains for weeks as Tywin Lannister takes over Harrenhall, forcing the people to work and repair it. Unlike the other prisoners, she is not given freedom of movement. Instead, she remains locked away in the tower until one day when Tywin appears and orders her to be dressed and prepared for travel. The banners of House Lannister flutter across the riverlands as Tywin has Arya escorted from village to village, castle to castle. Though she stands defiant, dirt-smudged and bruised, her hands bound before her. The noose hangs limp beside her, a silent promise of what could come next. The soldiers sneer, waiting for the wolf pup to cower. She doesn't. Each time they enter a village, Tywin makes the same announcement.
This girl is Arya Stark, daughter of Eddard Stark. Her father is charged with treason against the crown. If her kin would see reason, her life may yet be spared, provided they meet my terms.
As word spreads of Arya's predicament to Riverrun, Tywin makes a bold demand, commanding that Riverrun parley with them. Although Robb had tasked Edmure to hold the castle at all costs, the news of Arya's arrival intrigues Catelyn, who is desperate for any news of her daughter. She consents to a meeting with a handful of Tywin's followers. Arya is kept under close guard as she prepares for their next meeting. But to her surprise, she isn't paraded in some nameless village or a minor castle. As Tywin camps outside Riverrun with a few hundred of his men, they create a gallows and show Arya atop it, a noose around her neck in full view of the garrison. The gates remain shut, but Catelyn watches this, her horror growing by the second as they show her off. She tries not to tremble.
Your daughter's life, Lady Stark. For your loyalty.
Mother.
Catelyn's face is pale, lined with grief, her lips pressed together. Her hands clutch the stone so tightly her knuckles turn white. Below, Tywin waits. The moment stretches. Robb had insisted that they cannot consent to whatever terms Tywin has. Jaime Lannister remains their most valuable prize, and the only thing that stops Tywin's hand. But Catelyn cannot help herself. She hadn't heard any word from Arya in over a year, and she feared the worst. To make matters worse, the Ironborn invasion of the North has only added to her worry. She tries to steel herself, saying that the Lannisters cannot be trusted, that they have more bargaining power. But it is easy to say that when her children are out of sight. Seeing Arya like this, literally hanging by a thread with one of the most ruthless men, breaks Catelyn's heart. She cannot bring herself to resist. Not when there is so much to lose. Not when she knows Tywin is not shy from harming children. She thinks of Rhaegar's children and shudders.
What do you want?
Tywin smiles. Terms are exchanged inside the halls of Riverrun. If the Starks release Jaime, Arya will be handed over immediately, and Sansa will be released once Tywin returns to King's Landing. Until such a time, some cousins of Tywin and Jaime will be handed over to ensure the Lannisters fulfill their end of the bargain. Once Tywin returns, he will also return the bones of the Stark household, nullify Sansa's marriage, and forgive all acts of treason committed in the war. They will even help the Starks drive back the Ironborn and recover the two youngest Starks if they still live. In exchange, though, Robb must immediately cease his campaign in the Westerlands, renounce their crown in front of the royal court, acknowledge Joffrey as the rightful king, and most of all, he must send troops to support the Lannisters against Stannis Baratheon. The last condition is added by Tywin to ensure no future Baratheon-Stark alliance. The terms are steep, and Catelyn is tempted to reject them. She knows in her heart that they will doom her son's ambition, but as she stares at Arya, she cannot bring herself to say no. By the end of the day, Jaime is released, and Arya, along with a handful of lesser lords and Lannister cousins, are brought into Riverrun. Catelyn also sends orders to Roose Bolton to send his forces to join Tywin Lannister on the way back to King's Landing. When the rest of the lords hear about this, they are furious. Robb rushes back to Riverrun, abandoning his campaign to confront his mother. The Northmen are in disbelief that Catelyn would argue such a thing, and the River Lords are furious, having suffered abuse under the hands of the Lannisters only to meekly accept their rule. None are more furious than Rickard Karstark, who feels robbed of his vengeance. Among those who join Riverrun are a handful of Lannister guards to watch the lordlings. One of these is a Lorathi man who approaches Arya in the middle of the night and smiles. She recognizes this man as one she saved when the Lannisters attacked their convoy.
A man pays his debts. A man owes 3.
3 what?
The Red God takes what is his, lovely girl. And only death may pay for life. You saved me and the 2 I was with. You stole 3 deaths from the Red God. We have to give them back. Speak 3 names, and the man will do the rest.
I can name anyone. And you'll kill him.
A man has said.
The Blackwater roars with the tide, its waters churning green with wildfire's sickly glow. Flaming wreckage drifts aimlessly, the charred remains of Stannis Baratheon's fleet smoldering under the night sky. Yet the battle does not end with fire. Most of Stannis' army manages to land and assault the city, their battered forms still rushing up the ladders and facing off against the poorly trained Lannister garrison. The Baratheon host fights like cornered wolves, but they are outnumbered. The walls of the city spit arrows into their ranks. The wildfire-stricken bay cuts off any retreat. This is the only way to move forward onto the walls. Hundreds die in the attempt, but a few manage to reach the walls and clash with the soldiers there. Tyrion and the Hound try desperately to beat them back, but soon the storm reaches the peak of the walls, driving them back. Soon enough, rams are brought forward and batter the walls. The mud gate begins to crack under the assault, and frightened defenders from the inside see figures eager to approach, practically ready to pounce. That is until they hear the horns from behind. Not the loud Baratheon horns, but those of the Lannister and Stark forces. Tywin Lannister's army sweeps through the streets of King's Landing like a golden tide, reinforced by the banners of the Reach and the reluctant swords of the Riverlands. The city's gates swing open, not to let death in, but to unleash it. As thousands of fresh soldiers pour onto the battlefield, the city garrison rallies and slams into Stannis' already battered vanguard. In the thick of the fighting, Stannis Baratheon swings his sword, hacking through the knights in gold and green. His jaw clenched, his face streaked with soot and blood. He has always fought for the throne as if it were his by right, but tonight, the truth is undeniable. He is losing. Horses scream. A column of Tyrell cavalry barrels through his ranks, mowing down men as they break against the charge. The banners of House Baratheon flicker and fall, trampled underfoot. Men turn, eyes wide with panic. At the heart of the melee, the would-be king is dragged from his horse, his sword knocked from his grasp. A dozen men seize him, their swords raising and falling upon him. The last of his men scatter, some fleeing for the hills, others surrender where they stand. One thing is certain, Stannis Baratheon will never sit the Iron Throne. Tywin Lannister arrives at the city gates, his armor immaculate, his forces untouched by the carnage. He dismounts with the confidence of a man who already knows the battle is won. Cersei watches from the Red Keep, still clutching the bottle of nightshade she never had to drink. Joffrey crows in triumph from atop the battlements. And in the dungeon below, Sir Jaime Lannister smirks. He knows what this victory means. The wolves have given up more than they can ever take back. The great hall of Riverrun is heavy with anger. The banners of the North and the Riverlands hang above the assembled lords. But the unity they once symbolized is crumbling. Lord Rickard Karstark stands at the center of it all, his face red with fury, his voice echoing off the stone walls.
You have handed our kingdom to the Lannisters, without the king's permission, without his word. You did this, my lady. You, who are no king.
I did what I had to for my daughter.
A daughter? You would trade a kingdom for a daughter? What of my sons who died to build it? And my sons lie in the ground because of the Lannisters. You released Jaime. You send our swords to fight for them. And you do not even have the decency to ask your king. And you, your grace, do you mean to tell me you would have done the same?
I would. I would not have left my sister to hang. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. The Blackfish, standing beside Catelyn, nods approvingly. Others, Lord Bolton, Lord Glover, remain still, their thoughts unreadable.
Then you are no king of mine.
The words land like a slap. The silence in the hall is suffocating.
Then ride home, Lord Karstark. If you no longer wish to follow me, then go. As do any others. But I will not be an oath-breaker. I swore to the Lannisters, and I will keep my word. Very well. At least I have a home to return to. The rest of you should ask yourselves, will you still have a seat once the Ironborn are through?
As Lord Rickard storms off, he is joined by a few lordlings, including several river lords who had their own seats pillaged by the Lannisters. On his way out, Lord Karstark glances at her.
She wasn't worth it.
The words sting more than Arya expects. She clenches her fists, forcing herself not to flinch, not to scowl. She has heard worse, endured worse. Still, it festers. Later that night, Arya finds Jaqen H'ghar against a stone wall, eating an apple.
A girl has come. Good timing. A man rides out on the morrow to escort your sister home.
Jaime Lannister.
Jaqen tilts his head, chewing thoughtfully. He swallows, then smirks.
A name has been given.
Days later, the news comes. Jaime Lannister is dead. The official tale spreads like wildfire. He fought too hard in the Blackwater, pushed himself too far and too soon, as he was just released from captivity. His body gave out from exhaustion, the journey, the battle, the wounds, all too much, even for the Kingslayer. But some whisper of poison, of a death too sudden, too convenient. Catelyn hears the news in the halls of Riverrun. She does not celebrate, does not mourn. She only grips Arya's shoulder gently, a silent reassurance that she will not blame her. she does not feel guilt. Jaime Lannister was a debt that had to be paid. She has 2 names left. But she has little time to think on that, as Sansa soon returns, and with her arrival, the Northmen move to reinforce their holdings and drive back the Ironborn. With their forces still occupying Moat Cailin, advancing is difficult, but Robb manages to devise a plan by sneaking in a small group of men through the hidden paths in the bogs. Supported by the Crannogmen, they strike at Moat Cailin from the north, while their larger force hits from the south, with their forces falling on them like a pincer. At first, the Ironborn fight hard and beat back the initial assaults. The presence of Victarion and his Iron Fleet buoy their spirits as they launch a counterattack, using their ships to bombard and support the garrison. However, the Crannogmen have their boats, small skiffs and riverboats that can navigate the neck better than any longship. They camouflage themselves in skins and leaves before firing arrows and blow darts upon the crews. Soon, their naval dominance is challenged while Robb leads another daring assault into the walls and capturing the towers one by one. Victarion has no choice but to gather up the survivors and retreat to open sea. Unfortunately, he doesn't get far as the promised Lannister support arrives. Devon Lannister takes a small fleet of ships from Lannisport and hits them as they try to retreat. The Iron Fleet is scattered, leaving them unable to support the rest of the Ironborn throughout the region. However, that is the extent of the Lannister support. Shortly after Jaime's release, the Lannisters organize a great wedding to celebrate the union of Joffrey and Margaery Tyrell. Yet, shortly after this marriage, Joffrey unexpectedly dies, some say by choking, and others by poison. Even Arya and Jaqen have no idea how this happened, but no one in the north mourns him, or his grandfather when he joins him a few days later. The crime is blamed on Tyrion, who is tried and executed in a show trial. Robb gives the different lords leave and protects their lands one by one. The Ironborn are driven back. Winterfell is the first to fall, followed by Torrhen's Square, and then Whiteknife is cleared. Soon the only place left is Deepwood Motte, but as Robb and Galbert Glover both lead an expedition to liberate this castle, they are greeted by something unexpected. From the walls of the castle, bodies are left hanging from the ramparts, all wearing the badge of the Greyjoy Kraken, while the doors are open for them. Robert Glover's wife greets them, pale and shaking, but she manages to explain what happened. A few days before they arrived, another Ironborn ship arrived, and they had thought it was reinforcements and opened the gates for them. However, the Ironborn who came in didn't provide them with reinforcements, but instead butchered them, including Asha Greyjoy. The leader of this band is none other than Euron Greyjoy, who sits by the Great Hall. They find him sipping Galbert Glover's wine as he looks at them with a smirk.
Ah, a lost little pup wanders into my castle.
Say that with steel in your hands, Kraken scum.
I am no pup, and this is not your castle.
True enough. I have little care for it. Too airy and wooded for my taste.
You can have it back.
It is not yours to give.
Really now? Because it is my men who man the walls. It is my ship which patrols the waters, and it is my ass atop this high seat. And it shall be your blood soaking the floor if you do not leave.
Now, is that a way to treat a guest? I thought guest right means something here. After all, it is your wine I'm drinking.
I want the Iron Islands, boy. That and more.
Consider Deepwood Motte a gesture of my goodwill.
You will need far more than that for my friendship. Your family betrayed mine. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't send you back to your islands in chains.
Because it is what benefits us both. It was my nephew who betrayed you, and my foolish brother who failed to see the good an alliance might bring. I took part in neither of those acts, nor this foolish war. And if I may be frank, you find yourself short on allies, boy. You think the Lannisters have forgotten how you humiliated them. Don't think this is the end to the war. When that time comes, you'll need me by your side. Because who else will join you?
Robb glares at the Ironborn captain, but it does not produce an answer. After his hasty abandonment of the Riverlands, he doubts many have any loyalty to him. His campaign against Stannis also soured them in the Stormlands towards him, and neither Dorne nor the Reach have any loyalty towards him. He had hoped the Vale might join him, but they have remained quiet. This leaves only the Ironborn.
So, if we support your claim to the Iron Islands, you will help us? No. I will help you if you support my claim to the Iron Throne. You're mad. What claim could you possibly have? The same claim Robert had when he slew Rhaegar. The same claim Aegon had when he set foot on this continent. The claim of my axe. The Lannisters are weakened, and my claim is as good as any. Even so, we swore an oath. Yes, I know how you Starks are with your oaths. Don't worry, I don't expect soldiers, just for you to bend the knee when the time is right.
Robb frowns and says that he shall consider his offer, but as Euron leaves, he gives one more piece of information. Robb's other brothers might still live, asking him to ask Lord Lard about Rickon. True to his word, Lord Manderly reveals that he has information that Rickon Stark might have escaped to Skagos, and a rescue effort is organized that brings him back. As for Bran, Lord Wyman can't answer that, but Rickon claims Bran is beyond the wall, and the Night's Watch are organized to help rescue him. The first sign of Euron Greyjoy's war is silence. The strike comes at Lannisport. Euron initially has the remnants of Victarion's fleet strike along the port, luring out the fleet while Euron's own forces strike hard. When the tide rolls in at midnight, it carries with it silence and 100 ships. The Ironborn land in waves, axes gleaming in the firelight as they cut down those too slow to flee. By dawn, Lannisport is burning. Euron strikes fast and deep. Fair Isle falls next. The small folk are given a choice: kneel or drown. Those who resist are dragged screaming into the waves before their corpses are flung back onto the shore. At Case, he does more than kill. He turns, sending letters out. The Reachmen, Rivermen, and Stormlanders still bear fresh scars from their defeats. Many offer to support Euron once he offers them another path. You swore your swords to those who burned your lands. Swear them to me instead, and you may have vengeance. And so they do. Not all, of course. Some refuse. Some still cling to honor, for fear the Queen's wrath. But Euron does not need all, only enough to shift the tide. The Lannisters find themselves unable to commit their forces back into the Westerlands, as the Riverlands erupt in rebellion, with houses Blackwood, Bracken, Piper, and Vance being among the chief rebels. They begin waging a vicious guerrilla war against the Lannisters. The Reach moves to assist, but Euron strikes first, carving a path along the Reach's coastline. The Stormlands remain restless. Dorne watches, waiting. And Cersei trusts no one. Euron counts on it. No call to arms from King's Landing. No alliance is forged. The Queen watches from her tower and waits for the Tyrells to fight their own battles. And as she waits, they begin to lose. The shields fall, as do parts of the Arbor, as their fleet remains in King's Landing fighting battles on Dragonstone and the Stormlands. Though Old Town and other major places are fortified, they are only meant to stop men, not monsters. The first night after he arrives, the Reachmen give battle, a costly affair that drives Euron back, but leaves the water bloated with corpses. And from this, Euron makes his sacrifice. The sea churns unnaturally. The screams begin. Sailors whisper of something moving beneath the waves. They claim the silence is throwing people overboard. And then the shape appears, too large for any whale, tentacles breaking the surface like the arms of a drowned god. The first kraken surfaces at dawn. It rises from the depths, a nightmare of writhing limbs and endless hunger. Then another, and another. The Red Wine fleet has no chance. Tentacles as thick as trees crush hulls like kindling, dragging ships into the black. Sailors scream as the beasts pull them beneath the waves, never to be seen again. The Red Wine fleet vanishes as the tentacles fall upon them. They reach out and tear at the ship, ripping it to pieces, or simply dragging sailors off. Entire ships are ripped apart or capsized as they struggle to hold the tide of these monsters back. Those who reach shore find no refuge. The Ironborn have already breached the docks. Old Town is burning. The high tower seals its gates, but stone cannot stop the tide. By nightfall, Old Town belongs to Euron. The news spreads like wildfire. In Dorne, the Martells gather their council, whispering of vengeance and opportunity. In the Riverlands and Stormlands, lords who once swore fealty to the Lannisters now see another path. In King's Landing, Cersei seethes, but she is trapped. She has spent too much gold, too many men, too much effort securing her throne. Jaime is dead. The Tyrells are bleeding. She cannot march against Euron. Soon enough, she finds Euron marching against her, gathering allies from all across the Seven Kingdoms. Dornishmen, Stormlanders, Rivermen, even the men of the Reach are broken and pressed into his army. With barely an army left, Cersei has to return to the capital where the city falls to subterfuge. Unwilling to face a siege right after the last one, the Gold Cloaks yield and open the gates, leaving Euron to execute Cersei and her children. When Daenerys Targaryen sets foot in Westeros, she expects a war. She finds a kingdom already conquered. The banners of the Kraken fly over Old Town, Lannisport, and even King's Landing. The Reach, fractured and leaderless, has bent the knee. In the Westerlands, those who still resist fight not for victory, but for survival. Euron Greyjoy, self-proclaimed King of the Isles and the Greenlands, awaits Daenerys' arrival, but rather than fight, he sends envoys.
You came to take the throne, did you not? Well, I've already done half the work for you. Truthfully, all I require is one thing: to make you a queen. A marriage pact, to unite our houses together.
You are truly mad as they claim. You think I will simply marry you for my kingdom?
I do. That is how kingdoms are forged. The battles shape them, but it is marriage that solidifies them. That is what Aegon the Conqueror had done, and it shall be until the end of time.
And you are a savage. From what I've heard, one that is not afraid to toy with darkness to achieve their aims. What makes you think that I would ally with someone like that?
And if that isn't the crow calling the raven black, tell me, how did those dragons of yours come to be? And what of your first husband? Was he not some savage who rampaged the Dothraki Sea just as I did the Narrow Sea? What makes me any different?
Daenerys doesn't answer. She can't name one, and Euron takes that as a chance to press it further.
Besides, what I offer you is anything but savage. The chance to claim your throne without a drop of blood being spilled. Tell me, how loyal do you think your subjects will be if they see your dragon burning down their homes? Are you prepared to burn down Duskendale for it? What about Castle Rock and Lannisport? Or King's Landing?
Euron is no king of dragons, but he is a conqueror. He holds the Seven Kingdoms in his grasp, and his offer is simple. Daenerys will sit the Iron Throne. Euron will rule beside her. Together, they will reshape Westeros. She has waited her whole life for this throne. She will not throw it away for a war that has already been lost. And so, the Dragon Queen steps forward and takes the Kraken's hand. The horrors of Euron's war are not forgotten. Though people are silent, the whispers linger. The faithful recoil at what he's wrought. Even the lords who follow him mutter darkly about what kind of power he has. But the land itself remembers, and it does not approve. The ancient pact of men and the others was forged in the magic of the world. To summon something as unnatural shakes the old magic to its very foundations. At first, it is only a whisper, a shift in the air, a cold that lingers too long. But then the birds stop coming from Eastwatch. Then the patrols vanish. Then the wights begin to appear. They appear in the haunted forest, watching patrols or attacking lone rangers. They howl across the Bridge of Skulls, and bodies begin to disappear. For the first time in 1,000 years, the dead march beyond the wall. Some say it is blood magic that did it. Some claim the gods themselves have abandoned the world. It does not matter. The outcome is still the same. The nights grow longer and colder, sometimes so cold that men freeze atop the wall. But even from there, they hear the voices of the White Walkers, whispering and howling, keeping the men up at night. The few times men do brave the cold and stand vigil over the wall, they report strange shapes slithering through the forest until one day, that shape approaches. Men shout and prepare arrows, readying them to fire as they emerge. But the figure who appears is no White Walker, or even dead. It is Bran Stark, carried atop the back of Hodor. He comes from the woods, wrapped in furs, eyes distant and strange. He does not call himself Bran Stark anymore. He is the Three-Eyed Raven, and he has seen the true war. Bran Stark does not stride through the gates as the boy who once fell from a tower. He does not look upon his home with longing or joy. He has come as something else. A man, a seer, a whisper of something old and terrible. And he brings truths that no one wishes to hear.
The White Walkers stir because of what has been done. The blood magic has awakened them. It has called them here and shattered the magic that protects us.
The hall is silent. Then the murmurs begin. Rickard Karstark scoffs.
Madness. You speak of whites and curses. We are men, not children, Bran Stark. We don't require stories. We require action. Plans.
Bran has seen it. And if he is right, if the wall is in danger, then we do not have time to sit and debate.
The last time we followed you, Stark, you nearly lost the North. And now you ask us to fight an enemy we cannot see. To follow a cripple who speaks in riddles. Lead the fools who will follow you. But I will not.
In the dim candlelight of the great hall, Arya listens. She lingers in the shadows, unseen, as Karstark speaks in hushed tones to his men.
He's a madman. He speaks of visions, of dreams. He will poison the minds of other lords. Soon he will clamor for us to march to the wall, when we should be defending our own. Perhaps it is best we end this before it begins.
The meaning is clear. Arya does not hesitate. She does not wait. She finds Jaqen, now dressed as a free rider, and whispers his name. That night, Rickard Karstark draws his last breath. The goblet of wine spilled to the ground. In it is a poison carefully prepared to make it appear as if he has succumbed to the cold. They cannot stand alone. If the dead come for the North, they will come for all of Westeros. While some hear the reports as well and share his concern, they are skeptical, and Euron only laughs at it.
So the dead walk. Good. I should like to kill them again.
He does not fear the White Walkers. He does not believe Bran's claims that blood magic has caused this. He sees no connection between his rituals and their awakening. If it's true, he doesn't care. He has spat in the faces of gods, and they have not struck him down yet. But new war is coming, and so the Kraken King commits his forces. Daenerys is more measured. She does not laugh. She listens, considers, weighs the truth. She too understands the threat and begins marching an army northward, and so the dragons turn north. But as they lead the armies forward, the White Walkers come with the storm, their hatred made manifest in the ice and wind. They only grow more aggressive as they sense the presence of the dragons and King Euron. The Whites throw themselves against the wall, trying to bring it down and trying to storm it. At first, the battle goes well. The combined armies of the North, the Reach, and the Ironborn stand strong. Thousands hold the line in the shadow of Castle Black. War horns sound, low and mournful, rolling over the battlefield. Jon Snow takes command of them, using his experience with the White Walkers to drill the combined armies on how to fight them and the Whites. Above them, the dragons unleash fire. They burn through entire rows of the Whites, separating their armies into smaller segments that the living men can crush one by one. The first wave breaks against shields and steel. Northmen drive them back with axes and spears. Reachmen in gold plate carve them apart with lances. The Ironborn fight like madmen, hacking, butchering. Above, the dragons come. And yet, something is wrong. The White Walkers do not retreat. They do not falter. They rage. They throw themselves forward with an unholy fury, their ice-blue eyes burning with unnatural malice. The ground shakes with their numbers. Thousands upon thousands of them stream across the ice, throwing themselves at the living and pushing them back through sheer numbers. The crow's eye stands at the heart of the slaughter, laughing, swinging his axe through the dead as though he is reaping a field of wheat. He is the last to retreat, almost taunting them as he swings his axe around. The blood magic clings to him like a second skin, and the White Walkers hate it. The storm grows stronger, and then a terrible cry splits the night. Viserion screams. A spear of pure ice hurtles from the darkness. It strikes deep into his throat. The dragon convulses, wings beating frantically, blood gushing from his torn neck. The second spear pierces his eye. He crashes into the battlefield, his massive body crushing dozens beneath him. The ground shakes with the impact. His wings twitch, once, twice, then fall silent. From the darkness, a figure steps out. The Night King, clad in his icy armor and hefting another spear. Drogon roars, banking hard, eyes burning with fury. Rhaegal flaps wildly, struggling to stay in formation. But the White Walkers do not stop. This time, the battle is too much, and the dragons retreat along with the last of the living, Euron among them. But as they hurry back, the White Walkers continue their assault, climbing atop the walls. Those on top continue the battle under the command of Jon Snow, just barely holding the wall. But it soon becomes clear that this strategy is untenable. The wall is weakened, and the loss of a dragon cannot be ignored. The army turns as Robb shouts for them to run to Winterfell. Euron takes command of the rearguard, laughing as he continues to battle with the dead, his presence a mockery of their power, especially when the dragons set fire to the ground from above. The wind howls like a living thing, carrying with it the screams of the dying and the piercing shrieks of the dead. Their retreat is chaos. Northmen, Reachmen, Stormlanders all race through the snow. The Whites are relentless. They do not tire, they do not stop, and the White Walkers press forward like a silent glacial force. Only Daenerys' Unsullied seem to be able to buy them time along with her dragons. Their massive wings carve through the air, exhaling torrents of flame. But for every one they burn, a dozen more rise. And then, Rhaegal falters. His wing beats are uneven. His massive body struggles against the storm, his breath coming in ragged, pained gusts. Blood streaks his emerald scales, dripping from wounds torn open by spears of ice. He knows he cannot flee. He turns his head once, golden eyes locking onto Drogon, onto Daenerys, onto his mother. Then he dives. He plummets straight into the heart of the dead. His claws tear through whites, his wings send bodies flying, his teeth snap through ice and bone. He fights with the desperation of a cornered beast, refusing to die without taking as many of them with him as he can. For a moment, the dead falter. For a moment, the living have a chance to escape. Then, the White Walkers strike. A spear of black ice hurtles through the storm. It pierces Rhaegal's chest. His massive body convulses, his tail lashing wildly, his great head rearing back in agony. He tries to rise, he tries to take flight, but his legs give out beneath him, and he falls. Drogon roars in fury, but Daenerys grips his reins with shaking hands. She urges him to fly through the sobs and tears. Though Drogon roars and tries to fight, he eventually manages to fly off. But then, as Rhaegal's flames flicker and die, as the horde of whites swallow him whole, the great black dragon wheels and follows the retreat. The survivors pour through the gates of Winterfell. Half frozen, half dead, the White Walkers come like a wrathful tide, sweeping across the north, pressing against Winterfell's walls with the strength of an earthquake. Their fury is palpable. Even those who cannot feel magic can sense it now. But Bran can sense it, as he leans against a hearth tree.
It is the blood magic. It is what has enraged them.
Some scoff at first, but others remember. They remember Old Town. They remember the Krakens, the slaughter. They recall the horror. Who wouldn't be disgusted at what they saw?
It has awakened something inside them. Something that will not be calmed until the source is gone.
Euron Greyjoy stands atop the walls of Winterfell, his axe dripping red, his armor gleaming black in the torchlight. His uncovered eye burns with unnatural power. He watches the dead with something almost like hunger, but Daenerys looks at Drogon. She thinks of the dragons she's lost and the fury in which the White Walkers attacked them. A part of her wants to just dismiss them as monsters, as savage creatures, and yet there seems something strangely personal about them. She strokes Drogon, her one remaining child, and decides to fly off, leaving Winterfell behind them, but promises to leave her army behind so that they can continue fighting. Euron refuses. The White Walkers do not see him as a warrior. They do not see him as an enemy. They see him as the source of the corruption. They will not stop until he is dead. Arya watches from the shadows, gray eyes cold and knowing. She has listened to Bran. She has understood. She kneels before the hearth tree, pressing her palm against its cold, pale bark. Her voice is barely a whisper.
Euron Greyjoy.
The dawn breaks over Winterfell, which stands but barely. Beyond the walls, the fields are a frozen wasteland of corpses, men and whites alike, piled upon each other. The Unsullied hold their ground as the whites crash against their ranks like a relentless tide. Beside them, the men of the Westerlands in the north fight with desperation as they know this will be their last stand. Steel meets ice, swords shatter, shields splinter. Robb raises his sword and cuts through the ranks. Arya helps by killing off injured whites and firing arrows. Jon Snow holds the gate, taking command of the Unsullied. Yet still, they stand. But the dead do not stop. The White Walkers remain distant, standing atop a ridge of ice and watching. Their expressions are unreadable, their cold, burning gaze fixed not on the battle, but on him. Euron Greyjoy stands atop the broken battlements, laughing. His arms are spread wide, his lips curled in a wide grin, his single eye gleaming with something mad. He sees them watching.
Come then! Come for me! Come for the King of the Tides!
1,000 whites claw their way toward the walls. Their eyes burn like distant stars, their shrieks piercing through the storm. But those who get close are cut down. Jaqen H'ghar is already behind him. Euron does not hear him. Euron does not see him. Not until cold hands press against his back. He stumbles forward, boots slipping against the stone. He crashes into the tide of whites below, and for a moment they do not attack. They circle him instead, waiting, watching. Euron chuckles, staggering to his feet. He rolls his shoulders, blood dripping from his lips.
Well, are you just going to stand there?
The whites rush him all at once, ripping and tearing as he laughs. His axe rises and falls, cutting through rotten flesh as he laughs like a demon. A skeletal hand claws at his throat. He tears it away. A white clamps its teeth on his shoulder. He rips off its head. He is drowning in them, swallowed by the dead. But he does not stop laughing, even as they tear at him, even as they pull him apart. Only when he stops laughing do the White Walkers turn away. Daenerys Targaryen is gone. The great black dragon has fled south beyond the neck, beyond their reach. The Mad King is dead. Their business is done. One by one, they turn back and begin to march off. The battle is over. Winterfell stands, though barely. The dead have left as suddenly as they came. The survivors remain behind, breathing heavily, staring out over the frozen fields of corpses. The Unsullied still stand in formation, unshaken, though their numbers are few. The Northmen are slumped against the walls, swords resting across their laps. Bran understands the deal they are making. Daenerys is a queen of the South and shall remain there. Though the North may pledge itself to her, she will not journey there. But with 3 names, Jaqen smiles and rides off while Daenerys can claim the crown for herself. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.